Good morning, Claremont Center for Spiritual Living. How are you this morning? I'm Reverend Tracy Earlywine and delighted to welcome you to our community, this community of love and fellowship and truth. Wherever you are on your spiritual path, know that we know you are, in fact, a magnificent spiritual expression in this life, and we are here to remember that for each other. So thank you for coming. I also want to remind you that our practitioners are available for prayer support. You can reach them by calling the center. We have a prayer line that you can choose. We have their phone numbers on our website and also in our e-blast every week. And you can also email us at prayer@claremontcsl.org. So do take advantage of that. They'd love to know the truth for you in any area or all areas of your life. So this morning, our practitioner is Pat Richards, joining us from Harmony Center for Spiritual Living in Whittier. She'll be doing our opening invocation and a short reading. And to begin, I would like to ask you to simply take a deep breath, and if you're comfortable, close your eyes and go within. And simply allow the sound of the bowl and the words of the practitioner to take you to that place of the heart. That sanctuary where we remember that you and I and Spirit are one.
And right here, right now, in this amazing God-filled space, we know that God is. And God is the morning breeze that touched us this morning. That breeze that carries with it the scent of jasmine and lavender, the scent of the green, fresh-cut grass, the voices of little children laughing, and the sound of geese flying in the air and ducks quacking, chasing each other around on a little bit of a pond this morning, a little bit of energy going around this morning. So we take all that energy, all that excitement, all that promise of spring, and I send that out to you, because the breeze that touches me is the same breeze that will touch you. And every single person in our community, a very strong, fulfilled, spring-induced love that is sent out to this community of Claremont Center, that is strong and full of love and light and all the good energy that spring brings with it. Such an amazing feeling. Just lean into that goodness, lean into that light. And I'm so thankful to be here this morning, thankful to be of service and support for Reverend Tracy in this community. And please join me in saying, and so it is. So my reading today is from this month's edition, June edition, The Science of Mind magazine. It's called A Greater Good is Emerging. Over 100 years ago, in 1918, our founder, Dr. Ernest Holm, began his career as a published author and spiritual leader. His first book, Creative Mind, laying the groundwork for his unique brand of optimistic, metaphysical teaching that we share today. And while 1918 might seem like a world away from where we are today, there are some striking similarities. As Creative Mind was being published, the world was ravaged by the 1918 flu pandemic, and the war did not officially end until November of that year. With looming conditions outside of one's control, imagine hearing about this rising star of a teacher, speaker, and author telling you about what you can control. Creative Mind is filled with practical, grounded wisdom that still holds up today. There is only one mind in the universe, and it's in your mind and in every time that you think. As you learn to direct the power of your thought, you harness the power to change your world and experiences. Get over the thought of condemning people and things, he tells us. Live in the present moment and be the infectious things, he says. See the good in all things, even if that means being beyond appearances. Be expectant for good and more good to flow into your life. Expand your vision to even greater things. It's all wonderful, practical wisdom that I feel is welcome today, just as it must have been back in 1918.
Thank you. Just reminds us that truth is timeless. And so I want to start by mentioning and honoring Memorial Day. This was a holiday, a remembrance that started right after the Civil War. And when Congress made it an official holiday, it was not only to honor the fallen military through all of our wars and history, but it was designated as a day of prayer for lasting peace. And so we do take a moment to remember those who have fallen, who have lost their lives, their comrades, their family, their friends, everyone who was touched by these lives lived so passionately for what they believed, lives that were given for a cause. We should all have a sense of belief and purpose in our life, whatever that looks like. And so when we see someone or hear the story about those who have gone before us, who have done exactly that, it's inspiring. It reminds us that we are capable of deep love, of great action, of heroic measures. Now, it's not often that you actually hear the words to taps. Taps is traditionally played on this holiday. And so what I offer you right now is the poem that was written by Major General Daniel Butterfield. These are the words that go with the music. The day is done. Gone the sun. From the lake, from the hills, from the sky. All is well. Safely rest. God is nigh. Fading light dims the sight, and a star gems the sky, gleaming bright from afar. Drawing nigh falls the night. We look back and we have a sense of loss, perhaps, or maybe pride, or maybe just a tear. And even in this remembrance of times dark for those who lost loved ones, what we also see is that life goes on. Life always moves forward. Ernest Holmes told us that it's an ever upward spiral. That is the very nature of life. And it doesn't always seem that way, that we're moving upward or forward. It can feel like we're stuck or going backwards, or somehow we had momentum and now we don't, So I have to reassess all the time, am I really stuck? Am I really nowhere? Is it really so dark? Because some days it seems that way. But I found this quote from Tony Robbins, and he says, no matter how difficult the situation is, it won't last forever. What follows the night is the day. What follows the winter is the spring. And said another way by Anne Lamott, who has a way of speaking very directly and very clearly. She says, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. So, if I shift my thinking to I have been unplugged for a while and now I'm slowly being plugged back in, ever so slowly, I should be feeling like we're good to go, right? That expression is that we've planned and we've prepped and we're ready to roll. And I don't know about you, but I've had a few plans just pulled right out from under me lately. Often, a lot. I can't plan. There's no planning going on right now. This present moment still seems very limited. What I can and cannot do is so prescribed that it's stifling. And if I think about the future, It's very vague. And this uncertainty, this being in the unknown, is not comfortable for most of us. It causes us to worry. We can go to fear. It's pretty easy to figure out how things that are wrong can go on forever, or it can just get worse, or everybody's going to get sick, or I'm never going to get out of my house again. We might be wishing we could go back. Just go back to when everything worked. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but at least we were living. But we can't go back, can we? We can never go back. Raymond Charles Barker, a New Thought author, says that you cannot walk forward while you are looking backwards. And the Bible tells us that you cannot put new wine into old skins. They'll break. We are never meant to go back to the past. You know, memory is pretty selective, right? It's really easy to think about the good old days, or at least the better than this days. And it's not that there aren't elements that weren't better, but we have to remember that memory chooses what it is that we want to remember. Think about happy days, right? You go to the diner, you hang out with your friends, everybody's home for dinner. But it was also a time when women were expected to stay in the house, to make the home, to be the homemaker, not go out into the world and work. You know, if you were a child of the 60s and there was like peace and love and Woodstock and all kinds of good things, it's important to remember that there were also anti-war protests and that Martin Luther King was assassinated. If you think about the 70s and the rise of feminism, or perhaps the brilliant work of Katherine Johnson, the first African-American NASA scientist, one of the hidden figures featured in the movie. Fabulous. Progress. But it was also the time of Cesar Chavez and the Delano grape strikes and having to organize the farm workers so that they would be working in reasonable conditions, which up until then they had not been. You see, our past shapes us individually and as a culture. And so, yes, there are lessons to be learned. And yes, we can look back and honor and acknowledge where we've come from, how far we've come, what we still want to do. But we're not made to go back. We're not intended to move backwards, primarily because we're different. I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago, and neither are you. We're called to move forward. So with this good to go idea, which is the title of this week's talk, we're good to go, I actually started thinking about it in terms of to go is good. If I want to go out to dinner or breakfast or lunch, I hit the drive-thru. How cool is that? I get my good or my food to go. And there's something about that that is a little bit ridiculous and still somewhat enjoyable. We find our good wherever we can. That's what we're all in the midst of. And isn't this an interesting creative process that we're all doing? We find our good where we can. So some of you have heard this story. If you were at a recent Wednesday night when practitioner Veronica Silva was speaking to us, she used this story as one of her examples. But I share it with you again because I just find it so delightful and exactly what it is we're talking about here. The British decided to build a golf course in Calcutta, India. And once the course was built and golfers began to play, the monkeys in the surrounding jungles joined in the fun. They would pick up the golf balls after the golfers hit them and throw them in all directions. The exasperated golfers brainstormed on how they could control the monkeys' behavior. First, they built fences around the golf courses. They climbed over them. Then they tried distracting the monkeys with bananas and other fruit. You know, being distracted by food, how is that working for you? Yeah, it didn't really work with the monkeys either. They just kept showing up for dinner and throwing the ball. And finally, they tried trapping the monkeys and relocating them deeper into the jungle, but of course they came back because they knew where all the fun was. So the British decided that for this one course in Calcutta, the new rule would be that a golfer plays where the monkey drops the ball. In other words, if you can't beat them, play along with them. Now, this is a good metaphor for today. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed millions of lives around the world. Thousands of precious lives have been lost. Jobs have been lost or curtailed. Finances have taken a hit. Schools have closed or gone virtual. Everyday life has definitely changed. Many of us have self-quarantined. This creates anxiety, this sense of a loss of control. People are grieving. But yet, we're invited to do this. Brock says, if we are to find any peace, if we are to find freedom, what we need to do is learn to pause and to say, okay, this is where the monkeys drop the ball. I'll play it from here as well as I am able. It gives new meaning to the changing events in our lives. If we can let go of our need to control, we can't control other monkeys or anyone else. And instead focus on how best to play the game, we can concentrate our energy on what we can do instead of what we can't. Some monkeys in our world today, balls are flying everywhere. I'm being asked to play from perspectives that I have never experienced before, and so are you. And yet, the truth is, if we're out there on the golf course, we still know how to golf. We still know how to live. We still know our spiritual truth. We just have to look at it a bit differently. There's a commercial on right now. I think it's a telephone company, but it starts off with the word whatever. Whatever, 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 whatever. Now, when a teenager says that to you, you know that you're being totally dissed. But the message is, whatever gets you talking. And it's all about use text, use FaceTime, do a little video chat, send a little mini movie, go by somebody's house and wave, come up to the window and kiss through the glass. It's all about whatever gets you talking. In other words, wherever you find the ball, you can still connect. You can still belong to someone, to belong to a family, belong to a neighborhood. That too is our nature. To belong, to connect, to grow, to evolve. So when we think about this uncertain future, instead of going to worry and fear and doubt, we can shift our perspective. Okay, so the ball is not anywhere near the green where I hit it. It's over in the rough. But you know what? If I take the higher view, I change my perspective about what's actually happening, accepting what is, my perspective and my perception together allow me to engage in life in this new way for now. And for right now, I can do that. And so can you. Ernest Holmes is quoted in Science of Mind magazine, and it's from Living Science of Mind. It says, what would happen if we could convert the energy of fear to faith? The energy of doubt and uncertainty into a feeling of belonging to the universe and being safe in it. What would happen if instead of moving into fear, we shifted into curiosity? What if we just wondered what might be next? What if we trusted that somehow when we got there, we would know what to do next? That somehow when we walked the length of that course, we would eventually find our ball and figure out a way to hit it. I think that's very possible. And I think, again, that's exactly what we're doing now. We all know that there's brain science that shows the effects of meditation and spiritual practice on our thinking. We can see areas light up when the yogis go into deep meditation. But there's always new science being published. And Mark Waldman has an article talking about 5 different areas of the brain. And the largest of these is the imagination section. Besides the imagination section, there is a thinking section. Now, what's interesting about these 2 parts of the brain is that they toggle back and forth. If you're in thinking, you're not in imagination. And if you're in imagination, you're not in thinking. Which explains why some people are all in their head and they have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, no deviation. You know who I'm talking about, right? And then there's the other people who don't get anything done because they're off dreaming. And then there are those few gems who do both. So our call really is to do both, to spend our time in both areas. In the thinking area, we're basing our thoughts on our previous experience, and we're weighing the pros and cons of making a new decision. So when we're confronted with something new, we look back to see what we've done before and what might work, and we weigh out the pros and cons. Now that positive and negative back and forth is important because that's exactly what allows us to make a good decision. Think about it. If you only do all one or the other, it's like having one oar. You're just going to row around in circles, right? The all positive is la, 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 everything's fine, and, the walls are falling down around them. And the all negative is, Eeyore, and nothing's ever good, and it's never any fun, and why bother? But when you do both, you make a decision that allows you to move forward. Now, if you don't have anything in your experience that tells you what to do in this situation, you might be caught between the pros and cons of, well, I'm just either never going out to breakfast again, or I'm going to get the virus. That's kind of an arbitrary choice, but if that's all you know from what information you have now, you may not know what else to do, unless you consciously switch to your imagination. And your imagination, remember, the largest part of the brain, is going to be the place where we sort of sit idle and just let things drift. All that stuff you got yelled at for in school, daydreaming out the window, and just kind of see what new ideas might show up. And then our thinking mind will allow us to implement that or figure out the steps. But we need both. And what happens from that imagination section that I see today, I see people having picnics in their driveways on cul-de-sacs so they can wave to their neighbors and talk to each other. I see people parading by in their cars for birthdays with signs and streamers and honking their horns, or the teachers waving at their kids in their homes, the band director that went around to all of his seniors' houses to honk his horn for happy graduation because they didn't get to play their final concert. These are all things out of people's imaginations. And this is who we are meant to be. This is how we are meant to live. This is our opportunity right now, even in this situation. So this back and forth, this balanced life we want to create between imagination and thinking comes from another part of the brain that synthesizes. There's a few other parts, but we're just looking at these three. The synthesizer is going to allow us to integrate both aspects of our thinking, our imagination and our thinking. It's sort of like putting all the ingredients into the pot and you bring it to a boil. And then what you're supposed to do is turn the heat down and let it simmer so that the flavors can marry together, so that all of it can cook into what was once individual ingredients and become a beautiful soup or a stew or your mom's pasta sauce. So we have this opportunity to turn the heat down. You can't live at a boil. You can't live at a full boil. If you're feeling stressed and argumentative and depressed and you want to sleep all the time or eat all the time, you're living at a full boil. What we need is that chance to back off the heat and rest and allow our minds to do its work so that we feel whole, so that all of those flavors are blending together into something wonderful that is our true power. We have this ability to integrate all that we are, even here, even now, when we keep our higher perspective and acceptance of what is, so that we might move forward from here. We look back and see where we've been and realize we're good to go. We're good to move forward into the future because we can trust life. We can trust the infinite possibilities of the power that God is to show up in us as a new idea, as a new way to express, as a promise that we are still belonging to each other. We're good to go, even from this here and now. And whatever we choose to do is good. Namaste. And so, if you will, join me in a moment of prayer. Taking a moment to tap into that sense of the presence that lives within. That energy of life and love that is always there. That place untouched by the world, that is the very essence and energy of all that I am, all that you are. It is here that we remember that we are a part of all life, and that life is for us, for itself, for a greater expression in creative ways. And so I speak my word this Memorial Day weekend for remembrance and honor and acknowledgement of lives lived passionately, lives given for a cause, and prayers for an endless peace. I speak my word for that peace to show up in our lives right now, right where we are, as a sense of wholeness and empowerment that comes from integrating our imagination along with the facts. That our truth is bigger than the circumstances we read about. And that in fact the connection that we feel one with another is the true reality of all life. And in that connection, we are blessed. So I simply give great thanks for this blessing of family and friends, for the blessings of lessons learned from history, both mine and communal, for the blessings yet to be, even though this future seems uncertain, it is in fact the infinite possibility laid out before us. And I call it good and very, very good. For I know that it is God. And I release my word into the law, for I know that as I believe and as I speak, it is already done in the mind of God, already unfolding in space and time, perfectly, here and now. And so it is. All right. So this week, I remember that we normally do an affirmation after my talk. However, I do not have an affirmation. So I will leave it to you to write your own affirmation for the week, something that calls you into, I'm okay right here, and I am good to go for the future. And so it is. All right, let me tell you a little bit about what's happening. We have our Wednesday night meditation and gateway service. Nisa does our meditation via conference call, and the Wednesday night service is via Zoom. You can find the links in our e-blast and on our website. So do take advantage of connecting spiritually with your fellow members of the community. I've found that the discussions are quite lively. The meditations are quite peaceful, and it's all a really good way to stay connected during the week. So do that, take advantage of that on Wednesdays. We also have a happy hour call on Thursday nights at 7. Again, that's via Zoom, which means you can see and talk to everybody else who's on the call. It really is just for conversation and to see each other's faces and catch up a little bit. We've been having a great time, and I invite you, if you haven't done it yet, give yourselves an hour on Thursday night from 7 to 8 and join us. We would love to have you. You should have sent in your 50/50 raffle tickets by now. There's going to be a lucky winner next Friday. We'll draw a name and call the winner, and you will win half of the proceeds. The other half will benefit the center. So I'll give you a couple extra days to get those tickets mailed in. If you haven't already, send them now and make sure we get them before Friday so that you are in the drawing. It's a lot of fun, and we're going to have a big winner, I'm telling you. It's worth your while. Okay, and again, thank you all for continuing to contribute to Claremont Center. We do what we do because you are the support and owners of this community. And so we welcome your gifts. You can mail in some contribution. You can use the button that's below the link to this talk on our website to donate via PayPal. Or if you have some other creative way, by all means, call the office or send me a text and we'll take care of it for you. We can't do it without you. We're so delighted to be able to do what we do. Thank you to our production team and to Jeff for helping us put it all together and out on the website, and to our practitioners for holding the high watch. Because this all begins in consciousness, and who and what we are comes from within and shows up as this community. We are so blessed and you are so loved. Until next time.